Hello again. I'm going to do some songs from my cowboy days and also from the history of New Mexico. And this first one is kind of a collection of about a dozen people that I knew from about 9 years of doing farm and ranch work in the Kansas Flint Hills and eastern New Mexico around Santa Rosa and Fort Sumner, and they boiled down into two people, Jake and Alice. So. Now Jake bucked down from a bull when he was 21. Broke his shoulder in 3 places, the doctor said. And the left side always hung down lower from where the doctors never quite said it right. And his friends, they always called him Droopy. No one else dared call him by that name, 'cause his friends cared more than he could ever know. And Jake was a lucky man at 21. Now Jake married Alice when he was 32. And they got jobs in Oklahoma, chasing cows. And they rode a string of sturdy Hancock horses and had $1,400 in the bank. And his friends, they always called him Droopy. No one else dared call him by that name, 'cause his friends cared more than he could ever know. And Jake's a lucky man at 32. Now Jake and Alice, they raised a couple of kids up into their 40s. A boy, a girl, their pride and their joy. And then a twister took the house and both the children. And Jake's luck ran out at 44. And his friends, they always called him Droopy. No one else dared call him by that name, 'cause his friends cared more than he could ever know. Jake's luck ran out at 44. Now Jake and Alice picked themselves back up again, with his shoulder hurting more than ever before. Taking stray kids into the brand new house their friends had built. And Jake's a lucky man at 45. And his friends, they always called him Droopy. No one else dared call him by that name, 'cause his friends cared more than he could ever know. Jake was a lucky man at 45. Oh, Jake was a lucky man. Oh, Drake and Alice ain't doing too bad, and Droopy, he's a lucky man at 45. Now, I like to write songs about people who contribute to society as a whole, and I've never been a big fan of the so-called Western outlaws, who I consider to be just basic gangsters. I'm interested in the real heroes and heroines in our society, and one of them is a woman whose name is Sally Rook. Sally Rook came to Folsom, New Mexico in 1909 from Iowa, and she came there for health reasons. Apparently she had curvature of the spine, scoliosis. She got a job. By the way, Folsom is east of Raton. It's about 7 or 8 miles from Johnson Mesa. It's about 40 miles or so east of Raton. In 1909, when Sally arrived, Folsom was probably 900 people. Today it's about 40, maybe 45. She became the telephone operator, the switchboard operator, and it was located in her house. And she connected people around Folsom so they could talk with each other. Now there's a intermittent stream that runs through Folsom called the Dry Cimarron. I've walked across it. I did a concert there about 10 years ago. You could walk across Dry Cimarron. Well, one night the Dry Cimarron became 5 feet deep and a half a mile wide. And Sally was called from someone west of Folsom there, who had a phone and said, "Sally, there's a flood coming into Folsom. Get out. Drop everything and get out." Well, she could have done that, but she didn't. Instead, she started calling people in Folsom, telling them to get out. And she kept calling until that water wall hit Folsom, wiping out the town, killing 18 people, including Sally Rook. And they found her a couple miles down the stream in a sandbank, and they, of course, identified her because of the bend in her back. The telephone operators in 1909 from around the United States sent dimes, which apparently was what a phone call was then, sent dimes to help pay the burial expenses for Sally Rook. They sent 3,854 dimes to help bury Sally. Town put a marker up. Just a few years ago, the state added a monument to her. She died alone, Sally did. No relative ever came. But she's a real heroine, and this is Sally's song. Welcome to Folsom, Sally Rook. No one will care that you bend. Quiet little town, friends all around. Welcome to Folsom, Sally Rook. Now Iowa was too cold for your health, and Folsom courted you and won your heart. short walk in your house to the telephone exchange. How gracious life can be in this town. Welcome to Folsom, Sally Rook. No one will care that you bend. A quiet little town, friends all around. Welcome to Folsom, Sally Rook. Now the dry Cimarron is a tiny stream, weaving in and out of the town. How easy it all was, watching folks ride by, not knowing what the stream had in store. But the rains came down just like God was there, filling the stream a half-mile wide, ripping and tearing and taking what it would, crashing down the wash into town. Welcome to Folsom, Sally Rook. No one will care that you bend. A quiet little town, friends all around. Welcome to Folsom, Sally Rook. Now Sally, she was warned of the water wall and told to get to higher ground. But she stayed at her telephone calling in her shortening life until the water took her down. Welcome to Folsom, Sally Rook. No one will care that you bend. A quiet little town, friends all around. Welcome to Folsom, Sally Rook. They found her miles down the valley. Her bent back told them of her fate, and the dimes that were sent paid her final rent. But no one ever came to take her home. Welcome to Folsom, Sally Rook. No one will care that you bend. A quiet little town, friends all around. Welcome to Folsom, Sally Rook. Welcome to Folsom, Sally Rook. Welcome to Folsom, Sally. So when next time someone's mentioning Billy the Kid or Jesse James or I don't know, Sam Bass or the Daltons or John Wesley Hardin, just tell them they're no heroes. Sally Rook is the hero. She gave up her life to save all of those people in Folsom. And
Steve, can I say something?
yes.
I just want to thank you so much. You know, I'm gonna cry, but I've got a friend here from Idaho, and her dad was a singer just like you, and so we're sitting here both of us just in tears.
I'm sorry, what?
Anyway, thanks so much. She's from Idaho. Her dad was Dewey Whitman, and anyway, so we're just sitting here going, "This is amazing to hear you sing." Thank you so much.
Oh, well, thank you. I'm sitting in this living room. You know, this is the first time I've played to nobody directly in front of me on purpose. I've had, in my 40-some year off and on checkered career, I've had times when I've had no audience because no one wanted to come and see me. I don't need to tell you where that was, but this is quite an experience, you know.
Well, people are loving it. We can't talk, but you know the fantastic thing about this is that people all over the country can join us, so it's wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah, well, I'm glad people are listening because it sure beats not listening. To state the obvious. Now, I write songs like Sally Rook, but I also co-write with people like Andy Cohen, the great blues finger picker, and a guy named John Sparrow. John Sparrow and I collaborated on a song about a guy named Nicholas Lopez, who was a vaquero here in New Mexico. And John was reading in the Franklin Delano Roosevelt WPA papers. And for those of you who aren't familiar with the WPA, that's the Works Progress Administration. In the 1930s, the federal government took it upon itself to use public money and hired writers, singers, authors, dancers, musicians, actors, sculptors, to go around the United States and do just that. If you were an artist, you were sent around to do murals on county seat walls. And if you were a writer, you wrote county histories. And a writer came to New Mexico around 1935, and he interviewed a vaquero, an elderly vaquero whose name was Nicholas Lopez. And the questioning was pretty simple. What was life like when you were young? And Lopez was probably mid-70s, maybe around 80. We're not sure, but essentially the questioning was, what was life like in New Mexico in the late 19th century? And Lopez said, well, we had all the water we needed. There wasn't any water companies to sell us our own water. And he said, my dad made me quit school to herd cattle out on the Rio Puerco, which today doesn't run at all, but ran in the 1880s, was an actual stream. And that's, of course, for the west of town here. He said he made me quit school, but I fooled him. I took a book with me, and I read the book while I was herding cattle. And he was out there all summer, and he comes back. His dad looks at him and says, go get a haircut. You look like a buffalo. That was his comment. And Lopez also said that they grew sugar cane on the Rio Grande, and I didn't know that. And they would have sugar-ins at the end of the season, and they would have ballets, they would have dances. And at these dances, they would have a Pueblo fiddler whose name was Antonio Dominguez come and play his fiddle in the old Spanish style. And he said it was the most gleeful, wonderful time of his youth. And they would have these mortar and pestle situations where the sugar cane was put in a big mortar, and then there would be a pestle that would smash into it with a big arm that was raised and lowered. And he said that children would ride on these great big pestle arms. Apparently there was no OSHA in those days to prevent that. And throughout the interview, this WPA interview, Lopez kept saying, todo pasa en este mundo. And for those of you who don't speak any Spanish, and I don't understand why you don't, it means everything changes in the world. And what Lopez meant by that is that he was resigned by 1935 to the life and the society of his childhood no longer existing. That there were water companies even then, and all the land was being bought up, and things were categorically different for Lopez. Todo pasa en este mundo. But John Sparrow wrote a poem, and he sent it to me, and he said, make a song out of it. And I said, okie dokie. So this is Este Mundo. When I was a niño in Agua Fria, we had all the water we'd need, and the willows grew on the Rio. From Cienega clear up to Santa Fe, I tended me padre's cattle. From Los Tortillos to Arroyo Hondo. And for a month I slept on my saddle. My hair like a wild buffalo. El Indio, Antonio Dominguez, played a sweet violin long ago. For the dancers from all of the ranches, todo pasa en este mundo. Now I love to be home when the presses were turning, and everyone, they brought in their cane, and the pestle fires were burning. Children, they laughed on the beams, and those were the best, oh, the best of the good times. Oh, memories my spirit will hold. And as the syrup boiled out, we danced about. Wonderful stories were told. El Indio, Antonio Dominguez, played a sweet violin long ago. for the dancers from all of the ranches. Todo pasa en este mundo. Now, when I was young, we had all the water we'd need. Now the water companies, they take it away. And we grow our corn and our beans now just by the grace of God's rain. And I know that He knows what He's doing. Oh, everything, it comes as it goes. And I live as I will die, beneath that same sky. Todo pasa en este mundo. El Indio Antonio Dominguez played a sweet violin long ago. For the dancers from all of the ranches, todo pasa en este mundo. Todo pasa en este mundo. Thank you, folks, for not throwing anything at me, metaphorically speaking. And I've got a working cowboy song workshop at 2:30 later today. So if you want to get a bite to eat, get a bite to eat. But I'll see you all later. Don't run off. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you for the little New Mexico history, too. We appreciate that.
Oh, well, my pleasure.